I'm good.
I look like a hedge. Actually, I look like a bouncer.
You were.
I was a bouncer. That's right.
There we go.
I was in Pearl Street as a bouncer. When I first got my second
They were
job,
based on mine. They're like, oh, did you see what you
I was head bouncer.
It was small. I didn't in front of me. So I was like, yes, like, yeah, you don't give it down. It was so gross. I really want to go. You ready?
Ready.
Okay. Basically, this is a hearing about the cable contract renegotiation between Comcast and the city. And it's being sponsored by the Youth Commission. So theoretically, it's supposed to get youth input into anything that we want the cable company to do differently or better or anything in terms of new contract or next year or the year ahead?
The contract starts in 2006.
So starting in 2006.
Good. And this is, the rest of us here are the members of the Cable Advisory Board. And perhaps we could just introduce everyone.
Terry Morris.
And I'm Lee Bailey.
I'm Lee Sudan.
And I'm Bill Dwight.
And we're having a series of public hearings in preparation for the new contract. And our committee's job is to go around and get opinions and the ideas and what kind of experience people have had with the studio and what they'd like to see with cable access, because the mayor who created this committee and appointed us all with approval of the city council is very, very interested in making sure that cable community access is available and lively, because it's a wonderful resource we have in this community. And so we're now just checking to see what people feel, and we're here at the Little Theater at the high school. And by the way, this is being broadcast live for the first time in, 8 years or so. We were able to get live coverage back in the Little Theater. So maybe this is the first step of a new dawn of cable community access, community television here in Northampton. And so with that, let's open the questions and see what people feel about cable access, and if you have any ideas. And we have along the side, Mary Anderson has put together a list of some of the issues that we want to cover, or any opinions that you have on these issues. Two things that we should really point out is, one, that we don't, the committee and in the contract itself, we don't have a lot of say on either the programming or on the rates. But the rest, on what the studio, on the equipment, on customer service, on all the other issues that Terry has placed up here, we do.
You might want to distinguish between commercial programming and the cable access programming, but you do have control over.
That's right. We do it for our own studio. Correct. And Carrie will be taking notes on the board there to compile, so that throughout our public hearing periods, as we discuss with various groups in the community and then have a real public hearing, we'll have plenty of information to provide to the mayor. So let's go ahead and.
So do you have any input, any questions, suggestions that for change for Northampton Community Television?
Well, what is the status right now? Like, what do we have so far?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, we're working on that. Right now, Channel 15 Northampton Community Act is the community access channel, and we have in Northampton, Comcast provides the staffing for that station, and what we get is broadcast of programs such as this, government meetings, principally the city council meetings and the school committee meetings, and then local programming generated by anybody who's interested in doing it. Now, some of the some of the concerns that have been expressed so far in previous meetings and some letters and stuff within that the training isn't as widely available as folks would like. Access to the facilities isn't widely available as they would like, so that's why you don't see an awful lot of programming lately. But that's what we have for community access at this point. And one of the things that's being discussed is developing a nonprofit group of citizens who would oversee, instead of Comcast, they would hire the trainer, they would manage the studio, they would and be in charge of programming. And that's one of the things that's being considered. And I should emphasize it's actually the principal thing that's being considered right now for access.
I want to say where the current studio is.
Yeah, the current studio, and I always get this wrong because I always say the wrong address. It's
71 Bradford Street.
We're saying thank you, Carrie. We had to kind of 71 Bradford Street. And I'm not sure if you know where that is. A lot of folks have trouble finding it. It's a little tricky to get to. If you cross a railroad track behind Stop and Shop, behind the Potpourri Plaza, you get to it pretty easily. But otherwise, it's off North Street or also ultimately off the Industrial Drive across from Montessori School. And that's where the studios are now. The building is also where you go to pay your cable bill. It's trying to place that. Pay your cable bill on time, or you need to make it in person. That's where you go, and that's where the studio is currently.
Are any of you presently doing any video production?
I'm one of the video teachers here at the high school, and I have talked it up with the kids, and they are extremely interested in the idea of having a studio here and actually having the whole cable access, community access station housed here, as it was many, many years ago, back in the 70s. And I think that would make it a lot more accessible. And we would have a ready market of young producers who, we already have an annual video festival where we show our students' work, and we get some exceptional work out of these kids. And one of the video classes is currently doing a news program. So I was on the board in Brattleboro, the nonprofit board such as you're talking about, and we really did a lot of outreach into the community. We tried to bring in, all the local nonprofits to make either studio-based programming or to have producers go out and do some field-based production about what these nonprofits did, and then come back and roll those into the studio show to make it a little bit more professional. And I think that could happen here. I really think it could. I worked for public television in North Carolina for years and produced those kinds of shows, so I know what it takes to get it to happen, and I think it's very doable. This is a very vibrant community, and our community access is not up to what it ought to be given this community. Brattleboro is smaller than Northampton and not as dynamic.
So it's not an accurate reflection of what you think of what's
Exactly.
what the potential is.
Exactly. So, did you get a lot of feedback from the seniors the other day? I'm a senior myself, so.
They don't know. I wouldn't know. But did you get much feedback on access or?
On everything. And in fact, that will be, it was recorded, filmed, videotaped, and will be played at 7 o'clock tonight on Channel 15. So if you're interested in seeing some of their
But
comments.
seniors are usually a really good contributing factor to programming.
Have any of the students' productions been broadcast?
Not yet, although that is something that we would like to do, and of course would be easier to do here. I'll tell you, I did have one experience. I produced with my students a video about the Northampton 350th anniversary. I sent the tape to Northampton Community Access. It was not shown. I never got a call back, but was not acknowledged. Amherst showed it, because some of the artists involved in the video were from Amherst. So that, and I know that we're not staffed very well either, are we? I mean, he's not there
We have one person.
very
Short
much
hour.
part-time. Yeah, so you can't.
Did you ever get acknowledgement or receipt
No,
of the tape?
no,
Did you ever get the tape back?
no. Was he ever able to reach anybody at the studio?
Nope.
How many
So
times?
maybe I was calling at the wrong time, because I didn't really know, what the person's hours were, but I knew they were very limited.
From 1 to 9, 1 in the afternoon till 9.
Okay.
Usually. Are any of your students interested in doing internships or things like that?
Definitely, definitely. We have an internship program here at the high school, and that would be a wonderful place to be able to place students, especially video students. We have first year video and advanced video course, and then it stops. And we have kids that really want to go on beyond that, so an internship would make a lot of sense for them.
Do you think there are a lot of kids who would like to do internships there even now that are discouraged because the location is
Yeah,
not that helpful?
yeah.
How do your students see themselves using NCTV if it were to be here in the high school?
Well, some of them have really expressed a lot of excitement at the idea of doing a studio-based show, because that's not something that they've done. Although our video classroom was originally intended to be a control room and a studio, but when they renovated the building, I think they ran out of money.
Yeah,
and
that was
didn't-
one of
But the wiring is in there, so there's some infrastructure.
And there is, yeah, you actually have a production room and a studio. That space is set up to run as a studio.
Right, right. They now do basically field production. That's, and they have certain assignments, music video, a news feature, an interview, so that they're already learning kind of the building blocks of what would be good to use in community access. I think they don't necessarily see themselves as part of it because they don't see it. They don't know what it is, So.
I have to say that one of the better produced community access programs came out of this high school. It was high school students that did a show a number of years ago that was, I would say, one of the stronger programs that was running at the time when it was more fully staffed at the time. But they took it upon, the high school students took it upon themselves and did a pretty good job.
Was it a one-shot program or not?
No, it was the John Brashman show. It run every week or something, every 2 weeks or something like that. They were very committed to it. It was a nice subversive program. It was very appealing.
We do have a lot of that.
Yes. Oh, it'd be good to see that.
Yeah.
Good to see that.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys any more questions about that?
So why are you guys here?
What this one? In an ideal world, what's the best thing you would love to see produced out of have your cable company provide you with?
Well, I think what you already said like access in the high school, because I'm planning on taking the audiovisual class next year, and I think it would be great if high schoolers could be able to broadcast their own shows, because there's really great shows that are made, and the internships would be a great idea too. I just think it would be just a great opportunity for the students. So.
What would you guys watch on the channel?
I don't know. Are you saying what students would make to watch, or?
If the studio is here, do you guys watch the channel now? And if so, why? If not, why not? Would you be more interested in watching a channel that reflected you guys as a community and had shows that were made by you guys?
Well, yeah, I'd be interested just in watching a show that was developed by people I knew. I'd be understanding that which way it went, I have no idea. That's up to the people who know how to do that. Which I don't right now, but that could be me at some point.
Besides the news program that's the students are currently producing now, do you have any ideas for future programs that you'd like to see broadcast?
We have a lot of great stuff coming out from the audiovisual class.
know much about it, but I went to the festival last year, and there was a lot of good stuff that they could show on TV.
Yeah, they do a lot with comedy, of course, some very elaborate, and a lot with music. Those are probably the two strongest pieces.
And the production stuff you have principally right now are, you're running iMovie probably with Final Cut Pro, and then
Actually, we use iMovie
Oh, you
as
use
the
iMovie.
beginning, and kids do learn
At the
Final
director
Cut Pro
level, okay.
as they want to.
and you're shooting with just small digital camcorders. I mean, that's the other thing, is the state of the art of the equipment has changed so much
Yes.
that what you got 10 years ago for multiple thousands of dollars, you can get for under $1,000
Yeah.
now for the same thing. And it doesn't expand one educating, you don't have one kid, you have 12 kids learning on one camera or one computer. Now you can have multiple stations for people, but
Are there a lot of students who have this stuff at home?
Pardon me?
I'm sorry.
Oh, yes, actually, some students do have equipment at home, and they'll shoot stuff at home or after school, which, of course, is a little more dynamic than stuff that they shoot in school. You know, so we do encourage that, and we let them check out. We're like a cable access station. We let them check out equipment overnight and for the weekends and even for vacations, and that's where we get some really elaborate, good performance. Sports is another thing that they like to cover. So that's.
It is hard though if you're not in the actual class to be able to use the programs at the school. I've worked on projects with people that have involved AV stuff, and taping it's fine, like they have their own camera and we can tape it and everything, but we haven't, it's been very difficult to edit it because classes are using the computer and I'm not in a class, so I don't have like my own little setup. Whereas if the TV station was based there, I'm assuming there would be some sort of editing station that would be available for the public use.
If you're not in a class, can you get trained on using the facilities?
I don't know, but either way, I'm pretty sure that the teachers wouldn't let us use them without some sort of supervision. Like after you guys went home, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, well, we do let our video students stay late and edit by themselves, you know, but it is, we have video students in there all day, every day, so it is a little, and fairly limited equipment. So she's right. If another teacher wants students to do a project, we either buddy them up with somebody who is in our class, or if one of those kids is in our class, then they can invite a little group of kids in to edit. But it usually has to be after school, unless there's a small class and we can fit a few more kids in there, which we do when we can. But she's right, the resources are limited and stretched, you know, as it is.
Do you have an idea of how many students are currently in the classes that are using the?
There's generally about 100 kids running through the program every semester. It's a semester program.
So the
At
key
least
would,
25 kids, 4 periods a day.
so you see the studio being really fully utilized.
Oh, yeah.
for it being brought through. I might mention that our cameraman is a senior here. Who's been using cable access for a number of years. See,
do you have a closed circuit broadcasting system? Nothing. There is a way to broadcast in various rooms in the schools.
Yeah.
Is that
It hasn't been
Right.
used very much lately. I've only been here for 3 years.
okay?
But we did use it fairly recently for, the people from Smith came and did an assembly on sweatshops
Right.
and Walmart's relationship with them. And so they gave us a video, and then that video was
Oh,
shown
okay.
in various classrooms around the school all at the same time.
That was
So the
actually-
system is there, but,
I was actually the person who organized that.
oh, were you? Okay.
Yeah. Multi-talented. And it, it was very, thank you, Beth. It was very difficult for a lot of teachers to access it just because the equipment that we have in our school is not that great. I know my history teacher was planning on showing it because I had him the period it was being shown and I kind of made him. But we couldn't get it on the TV. So there are definitely glitches in that system. I don't know if that could be changed by having the TV station actually in the high school, but it is a reality that our closed circuit viewing is problematic.
Now, another dimension that not a lot of people think of when we talk about cable access and the like is the iNet, which I'm not sure how many students or faculty in the school use the internet and how access is, how fast downloads go, processing like that, but and also filtering systems. These are all things that have been open for discussion, and it's actually one aspect, and you'll see it on this thing here, is one of the aspects of principally from municipal buildings. Right now, where do we run it through? It runs, how's the iNet's kind of confusing how it works for the school systems versus municipal systems.
It's all in one system right now.
And principally, our big issue as a city is that we're overloading the system with things from the Department of Public Works and planning offices, which have large file downloads.
And also the school, the kids using it for downloading.
Music,
illegal music
which they are
download.
not allowed to do. Exactly for that reason.
Yeah. Whatever, we have a definite capacity problem.
Is that why our computers are always down at school?
I don't know why your computers are done at school, but
Well, like half the time it seems that you'll be talking to a teacher and they'll be like, I couldn't do attendance this morning, I couldn't get on the computer, the whole system crashed. Again.
Well, I teach photography in one of the computer labs, so, and in general, it's okay. Although, the network goes down occasionally, and then you can't get in.
so the internal network or the?
The internal.
Yeah.
But we are aware that I think we're hooked in with the rest of the city, so
Right.
that's why I always tell the kids they can't download music.
Right.
Or
Well,
videos.
exactly. It definitely.
Anything they'd like to download. Yeah.
Massive media downloads tend to
Yeah.
slow down the work of the city, actually. So that's the less evident, less sexy aspect of the conversations that we usually have about cable and the contract, but that is one aspect of what the contract will involve. So
Could it be expanded? Is that one of the things that we have?
could be,
Then it
or
should.
maybe more secure or proprietary, or one of the issues, of course, is filtering for the school system. And the other is simply the capacity and how to, as we move towards becoming a paperless society, and slowly, we need to have the means to transfer data files, and rather large and substantial data files. And anything that enhances that, of course, makes life much easier for us as a municipality. It's not what first comes up when people think about talking about the cable. They usually talk about programming. Why can't we get the Red Sox to do it more often? But we do. Actually, you get that's free if you have the right package. Just I just want to be clear. Training. Well, that was part of the discussion, I think, that we were talking about with the training. Obviously, there has been some complaints, at least that I've had personally fielded in a number of sessions, that there has to be more access to training on systems. I mean, right now, you guys seem to have actually a nice, highly functioning training program, which is good for a school. But our access system right now, we seem to be coming up short for training sessions. David actually is a good example. He's gone through the training, but people like David are few and far between. You really have to be powerfully motivated, make some serious accommodations in your schedule to get some training. So.
How long did you have to wait to get training?
What's that?
How long did it take to get training? How long did you
To
have
start
to
going
wait?
train?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, I'll do it.
You have to be on a waiting list.
It's fine.
Were you the only person in the class, or was it just you?
I didn't take a class, I just started working for it.
Ah, I see, okay.
In Brattleboro, we used to teach classes that would go for 6 or 8 weeks. And
We used to have.
we usually had people on waiting lists,
Yeah.
so they were running pretty
I
good.
used to work at the cable station, so we used to have pretty extensive classes that would run. We'd cover all the field production, and we'd have an editing training. As the equipment got smaller and a little more portable, then we would offer monthly workshops for camcorder, and then anyone who was interested beyond that would set up editing workshops. And
Yeah, I don't think there's been a training since when you were, right? Yeah, that was a year ago. January.
Yeah, it's been pretty sporadic since then, from what I understand. So hopefully that's one thing that we can improve upon, is to get some more regular training going. And
So you guys don't want to try to do training in the programming? You tried to do it, does anyone?
Like people that have actually made a show with the,
Well, yeah, in order to do a show on community access, to use the equipment, you have to be checked out on the equipment, which means you have to be trained to use it, the editing equipment and the cameras. I don't know if you know of anyone who's tried to do that.
I've known of like a show that was last year, like some guys that did something on the local access channel, but I don't know what their training is or anything. I know they didn't.
So how do you think the studio here could supplement what the training is that your in-house program offers? And is there something you think the studio could do that you're not able to do?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, they could do both interviews and that sort of thing in studio, but they could also do music and performance, and there just would be loads of things.
Oh, I just mean in terms of training.
Oh, in terms of training, yeah. Well, I mean, it would be training. You mean, could we take that on as teachers?
No,
That are
what
doing-
if the studio was located here with
Right.
staff? How could that supplement what you offer in your classes?
Oh, if it was staffed, and we could collaborate with the person who is staffing the studio, that we would be able to definitely augment it. I'm coming up hard, so I'm coming up with exactly what, but, you know, just the idea of creating a program that's sort of a shell, and that you can plug different videos, field production videos into, would be an easy thing to do with the studio.
Mandy said something to the effect that students who actually weren't necessarily in video classes would be able to, in the evening,
Yeah.
go and work and do production stuff that they wouldn't normally have access to if they weren't in classes. And then students in classes who have expanded hours and access to equipment, on top of the fact that the citizens of Northampton, or just in production, could also have free access to free equipment and training.
In addition, it would give the community a sense of what's going on in high school and the activities, and that would be wonderful to broaden. We see the page in the Gazette, but it would be wonderful to see more of what performances, plays, variety of things that you do here.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in
Sports.
It's a very artistic school.
I'd love to see that news program.
Yeah, I know.
I'd love to see that news program.
what about faculty? Is there any feedback from faculty about how they might want to use video equipment in their classes, or?
Well, we do talk to teachers about how they could incorporate some of the video stuff that we do into their classes. And it's a little difficult because of our resource shortage, but if the community access station was here, I think that problem would be solved. And kids have done some very interesting things for other classes when we've been able to accommodate that.
Sorry, you said what was the story from this piece?
Oh, our equipment shortage, I mean, we have 100 kids in the classes, so.
If the station were more accessible and there were more staff working there, would training occur regularly at the station?
Should have been now.
Yeah.
It's just not. I'm trying to figure out why.
Well, what's being considered also is the staffing would come under the authority of the nonprofit group that is comprised of Northampton residents, as opposed to now Comcast manages it as a corporation. they're, the staff member who is there currently is their employee. If we had a nonprofit board, it would be, that person would be an employee of that nonprofit organization, which by extension would be working for the city of Northampton directly. So if there were issues or problems or came up short with staffing and training, there's a more direct way to change that. That's right now, there's kind of, it's a corporate decision made by people who actually aren't involved necessarily in the training. So.
And there's this wonderful cycle. If you have more people getting trained, then you're going to have more people using the studio who then, so there's this incremental effect. And that's it's one of the things we're really looking toward, is something where there's much more energy in the studio. Lots of people are using it.
And would you have several nonlinear editing suites and maybe one cuts only linear? Or would you just go with all nonlinear?
The equipment inventory is one of the things that's being considered. And it would help actually to get from you what you would like to see in your dream studio, as it were, because right now those systems exist. It's a question of having the access to them, linear and nonlinear systems. You can bump edits or linear editing or insert editing. But it's a question of getting trained on it. Of course, as you point out, I mean, now we do with Final Cut Pro, which works almost like an avid system. It's, you can get that software for a desktop Mac, and whereas before it was a very expensive piece of equipment in a room that had to keep the temperature well maintained and stuff. So, but I mean, so if you can come up with, it would help. We've talked with Robert Barber and.
Well, I know he's been doing an inventory of what we already paid and what condition it's in.
And we in turn, we have an inventory list of what is currently available.
Than what you have.
Which may or may not be equipment that we'll continue to use, and it would also be part of the discussion when we come up with a final amount that we ask for in the contract. Determine equipment purchasing, training, staffing, everything else that would to sustain the system that we would like to see.
Plus looking out 10 years in advance.
Yeah,
which is
because that's a longer
always
contract.
a problem.
Right. Well, I know in Vermont, it's a percentage of the gross that is connected to cable TV, not broadband internet.
Right.
And
the internet's not covered by the same FCC
Right.
requirements.
But we were able to pay executive director and an access program coordinator and a part-time techie.
And those are there were full-time positions.
Two
and a part-time
full-times
techie.
and one part-time. And the other concept that we were really exploring is writing grants.
Right.
To try to bring in more,
More. That's the thing is the
a grant
nonprofit
where you're
setting.
in collaboration with a nonprofit.
Yeah, because they had a 501c3 nonprofit, so they can do grants. And Brattleboro actually is a model for Brattleboro and Amherst are model systems.
Yeah, Amherst has a
I wouldn't hold us up as a model, right?
Not now, yeah. And is there a sense of how willing Comcast is to expand here?
Well, actually, I don't think Stephen knows at this point. I'm not sure what Comcast sentiment is because we're talking about lawyers that are negotiating contracts. But part of the ascertainment phase is to determine what the community need wants. Because there's a cost, in some cases, there's an additional cost associated with it also. So we negotiate a contract, but then depending on what else we want, there might be an additional percentage fee attached to the bills that might be reflected in the bills. So all this is, that's our job is to come up at this point with a realistic number to ask for and negotiate for in the contract to provide Northampton with the state-of-the-art cable system that's appropriate, as you say, for a community that really should be generating some pretty impressive access television.
Yeah.
And a community of creative people who might be frustrated or feel daunted by the equipment, going back and show them how easy it is to use and get them equipment to use.
Kids can do it, adults can do it.
Don't ever say
That's a
that.
good rule.
Kids can drive cell
Well, we had, in part of our budget in Brattleboro, we would set aside a certain amount out of our operating budget, and that became the capital budget. So once you've done the outlay for the equipment, it doesn't take as much to
Right.
keep it maintained and to buy on a planned basis,
Right.
whatever else.
And you
comes
can,
along.
if you do that, you can also phase out your initial
Exactly.
capital investment. But all that is part of what we're trying, that's what we're trying to do, ascertain, is trying to figure out how much, what we need, what we need. Hopefully that feedback.
When you were asking earlier about different kinds of editing rooms, do you have specific needs that you would recommend?
Well, I think just Emacs come, and actually the good new G4s and G5s also come with the iMovie editing system on them, which is perfectly adequate for a lot of things. It's fairly flexible. And you mentioned Final Cut Pro, which we do have here.
You guys
as well
have
as
a
some
license for your Final Cut Pro, yeah.
Yeah, and I used to use, can't think of the name now, another system that we have up in Railroad that's very similar to Final.
Not the Media 100?
Media.
Okay.
Went out of my head.
You know what version of Final Cut you have?
No, I don't. I really have mostly taught the beginning students, so I haven't really taught them. But iMovie comes on the map, so it doesn't cost anything extra.
Yeah, it's pretty solid. How about cameras?
Well, we haven't had as good luck with cameras as we have with the computers, actually. We had Sony Digital 8 cameras, which really were not as durable as we needed them to be. And then we tried Canons this year, and we've had a lot of problems with them too. They would, 5 or 6 of them already been sent back for repairs. So, since September.
Do you want studio cameras too, though, for the?
We have some cameras like that that could be used in the studio, and we use those in a pinch when we're out of digital cameras that are in repair.
Oh, but so you can you have access to those that you can use?
And we have tripods and, other peripherals.
Good. Any more questions? Any comments?
How difficult was it to figure out that we actually had a tap in this room?
I don't have to guess.
Do you know?
I think it was 12.
To figure out that the tap for broadcasting was actually in this room.
The feed?
Yeah.
I don't know, Jeff, I think Jeff determined that the feed was live.
Yeah, we came by to check it out yesterday. It's
Yeah.
super work fine.
Because we've been asking them for months and they just got around to doing that. They suggested that we get someone, that we hire a contractor to find out with our money, so.
So this hearing achieved two objectives.
Yeah. Yeah, that shouldn't be.
No, that would be incorrect.
Yeah.
You know who?
I don't know.
But it is now determined, well, actually, we don't know for sure unless you've got feedback from Jeff that we're actually broadcasting.
Yeah,
We have.
We have, okay, all
We
right.
are broadcasting.
So it seems that we do have a live feed from the Little Theater, which is great. And
Yeah, first time in what, 7 years you said?
I
7 or
think
8 years?
the last thing we did was like a league room of voters forum, probably back in 98.
I did a debate here that was televised here when I first ran for office. I was lighter then.
Yeah, that's a great use of
Yeah.
community access.
Where else are we supposed to have these in the school? Is there supposed to be one in the auditorium and in the library?
We've asked for that information and Comcast is going to collate it together soon.
Yeah, I
So
think it,
speaking of the lot drops, what else would you use it for school uses if you had it with more accessible?
I think that broadcasting things, like we were talking about when the people came to talk about sweatshops at Walmart, broadcasting things like that on public access would be really interesting, I think. I'm sure there are a lot of adults who would be interested in watching it, and they obviously can't just come to the school and sit in. We don't have seats, and I think they find it kind of awkward.
And I think that's probably one of the best applications of this is we have when school clubs organize assemblies. A lot of times I think they would be interesting to people outside of school. Often they aren't people who are speaking anywhere else in the city. So that's after all both this theater and the big theater and also the cafeteria, I believe, are wired for to put out TVs in them. I think that would be very valuable application of that.
And we could host things here, that community events here, which would connect the high school with the community.
That's true. We
which
could
is
also use it. We could
something
also use
really
it to draw
important.
even
Yeah.
more things into the high school.
I know when the school was being renovated, I don't know if you might know this, there was talk of putting a drop out by the football field because there was interest in televising football games, but I don't know if that ever happened.
There's a drop off there.
There is, okay.
in fact, there were football broadcasts actually
Oh, there were?
not that long ago. Yeah.
Do you know maybe the gym? The gym? We used to do basketball games, but it wasn't live.
I mean, actually, at that point, it really wouldn't be that hard to do. It's just running some coax, isn't it? So, I mean, part of the thing is for instance, this meeting that we're having right now, the audio on it's going to be pretty feeble. I mean, right now it's running on the camera mic, and so you're more likely to hear David breathing than you are some of the more quieter comments, and so it could be improved. I mean, there's no mixing board here for audio. There would be in the main auditorium because there's all the AV systems are there in place, but there's nothing for miking. There's nothing for audio that's built into the system. So that might be worth considering. If you're going to have public sessions or public meetings, at least the means to mic at least 4 or 5 people with labs or something, or at least for having some ambient mics a little more directional. But I mean that's to be considered. Then it depends on what level, how much you want lights, you want all things associated with that. A good video recording system, or not. So I don't know. But I know right now this is barely adequate. This is barely adequate. This is a one camera shoot with no microphone. So if I'm watching this at home, I'm going, what's going on over there?
Anything else?
Jessie, do you have any ideas? She's one of our ace video students.
Sorry for my tardiness. I
That's okay.
don't really know what we've been talking about, but I think it'd be great to have it located here at the school because, just opens up a lot of doors for lots of opportunities for students and all the community aspect of it too, for broadcasting, assembly rooms, and student performances and stuff like that too.
I was gonna, as a sort of standard guy off the street, second a lot of what I've heard. I was glad to hear that Amherst is considered a model, because when we looked into, casually looked into, without a lot of drive behind it, into training or finding something for our son to do, boy, most people we asked said, well, you should find a way to do it in Amherst, because they've really got something going on. And calls here where, you know, it just didn't connect. And also the sweatshop forum here, I heard about from a couple other adults who, you know, heard about it from their kids. There was kind of a real buzz about it. It would have been a very interesting thing to kind of take advantage of something that was brought here and also make it available to the community. So I'd love to see the studio here. I'd love to see more community people coming in the high school and just, you know, as you've already said, this community should be producing some really interesting stuff.
Well, it's a little embarrassing that Amherst is broadcasting the 350th celebration produced by our high school, and we have not. I mean, that really is kind of a, that's kind of representational of the frustration, so that's actually mortifying.
Yeah.
So they really showed us up, so.
We have noted, duly noted that.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, if there are no more questions, I want to mention that we have 2 more hearings, informal hearings, one with the city departments and one with people who use and are active users of our community access station and studio. And then there'll be a formal public hearing later this spring, in which the entire community, anybody who's interested in this issue, is invited to attend and express their opinions. And then these recommendations will be compiled and provided to the mayor, who will be doing the negotiations with Comcast later this year. So on behalf of the committee, I'd like to particularly thank you, Amanda, and your youth commission, and we look forward to seeing a lot of you at the studio.
Thank you.